Yeah, good morning. I just wanted to share a few of the findings here with you. While we are discussing alternative technologies that are available, have been proven on the ground, and so on and so forth. There is when we are planning out this infrastructure, we actually took an exercise to find out what are the driving functions for and planning processes for a rollout of infrastructure. So let me just quickly go through these couple of slides to share some information with you as we find it across the country. Given the situation from the world, if you look at the WHO's report on the daily figures for India, it's about 200 million life years worth of productivity loss that we stand today as of now, as of a few years ago. But the pity is the accumulated loss so far has been 200 million life years, which basically means those people will exist, but they are not productive to our economy because of health reasons. But the situation is worse because in the next 10 years, we are going to book another 200 million life years, which we have accumulated so far. We are going to double it in the next 10 years. So therefore, I would like to call the audience to this particular aspect that there is an urgency, there is a need in doing whatever we want to do, we need to do it very quick. So in the process, all the new technologies that we talk about and so on and so forth is actually in a race with respect to these daily figures. So we are losing out there big time in our economy, and we are on the other side thinking of which is the best technology to invest. Should we wait for 3G to be there all over the country? Is there something that we can do with what we have got? And the same to do with the challenges of taking this technology. On one side, we have the technologies with us, but on the other side, we are facing challenges of the sort that I have indicated here, that 38% of our population cannot read and write. 8% of our urban population is computer literate. Rest of them are not literate on a computer. So let us stand in their shoes and try to understand what does ICT mean to them? How would they cross their barriers and get to adopting these technologies that we are talking about? We took a survey of about 28 live, very pioneering initiatives that have happened across the country. And sampled, across these initiatives, there are about 3 lakh patients that have been addressed already, variety of initiatives. And one of the key findings was that fantastic things have been achieved. Very novel, best known methods have been discovered by going to the grass tax, going to the rural areas and executing projects. But grossly, many of them, those BKMs are in the silos. They are in the silos of those respective projects, probably published and forgotten, or held very close to that project, basically because they don't have any incentive mechanism of sharing that knowledge with others. It's either to be given free or just to be held with the project. So bottom line is we need to accelerate preventive care, but to try and find a gold standard that will fit all these things is going to be a futile exercise. Therefore, we need to have multiple solutions and try to map and match the technologies that we have got with the need of the hour. So we do have about, let's look at the scenario here. We have about, maybe as I'm speaking, the numbers are higher, about 750 million telecom connections, including landlines, including mobiles, and so on and so forth, and about 100 million computers in the country today. This is the resource we have got today. Whatever we want to do, we'll either add to this resource or start using this resource in a more efficient way. So the question is, which services can use phones and which ones need computers? As we speak, we still are living with about 36% of our demand not met in terms of power generation. We have 64% of the power generated in the country, majority of which is going to the urban areas. 44% of our rural areas live with 8 to 12 hours of power outage every day. So what kind of solutions do we propose to ICT implementation in these areas? With 26 official languages and so many dialects, we are talking about just the previous session. It was a very nice thing to indicate that, one can speak, record, and send it across. Two barriers to that. One is the other guy should understand it. Second thing is there should be a legal accountability if something goes wrong. A document that is signed by a doctor today has legal accountability. A voice record doesn't have the same legal accountability today in our system. We all know that finally the organizations, the hospitals which are spending money, they favor automation that minimizes the learning curves. They favor automation that minimizes changes in their existing processes and practices. So we need to identify healthcare services that can be enabled in step with the infrastructure maturity. We cannot wait for infrastructure to evolve. We need to find out how do we change and adapt to those services. So we undertook a analysis, a fairly detailed analysis, and I will be happy to share the references to this analysis. It's been published at the International Telecommunication Union. We basically broke down across several healthcare programs, several types of activities, as you see at the top of this pyramid, like program management activities, surveillance activities, preventive care activities, interventions, etc. And from within those activities, we started seeing what are the types of transactions that people actually do, information transactions that people actually do within these services. And it turned out that while it looks like there are too many transactions, if you actually bin them to say what is that non-redundant type of transaction that will happen, we found only about 32 to 40 types of transaction across healthcare. So there are only a handful of transactions that we are talking about, information transactions that happen within this whole program. Now, if you further break down and see what type of information is being exchanged within these transactions, again, try to find out what are those non-redundant types of information which might be used across the entire spectrum of healthcare activities. We found about 112 to 120 kind of informations, different types of information that is being exchanged across these activities. So the bottom line here is there aren't like a million types of things to do here. If we actually organize ourselves, there are a couple of hundred kind of types of information that we are dealing with across the spectrum of healthcare transactions. So therefore, if we plan our infrastructure considering these data types, whether, I'll just go to the next one to indicate this. What actually is happening is all this information that we are generating in healthcare is being now plowed down into this funnel of infrastructure. And so on one side, we are seeing all this information is being generated by one of these platforms on the inverted pyramid that you see, landlines, basic cell phones, smartphones, all the variety of technologies we talked about, laptops, desktops, etc. And then we are using these standard technologies that we have got, CDMAs and EVDOs and HDSLs, each one offering a differentiated bandwidth and quality of service. Ultimately, all this data is in the form of either text, audio, video, or images. If we can treat the entire spectrum of data that is being passed in the health informatics area as this, then a very interesting thing comes out. So with this and the next slide, I'll conclude. This is a fairly detailed one, but I would request you to draw your attention to a couple of things here and not go through the rather detailed slide here. At the top, you will find various program activities, surveillance and program management, preventive care, and so on. And on the bottom side, which is not very legible, but it has been broken down into several transactions that fall within those programs. And what you see on each of these rows is an alternative communication technology standard that is available. And it has been matched to say which kind of technology can handle what kind of information. So one can see from this detailed map, there are several findings in this map I would like to bring you to attention at the bottom. where we see about 80% of these transactions that we are talking about can be achieved within 256 kbps bandwidth, which is the lowest today, I think, on the bottom line of our DSL connections, broadband connections at home. And definitely our, already our 2G, 2.5G kind of cell phones are able to handle this today. 3G is definitely beyond this. Okay, and I think the slide is not completely visible, but then we can see I have something called as FX, which is called applicable fraction of information exchange, which basically means if I take a certain transaction in healthcare, how much of the information can I transmit in that particular transaction using a telephone? A telephone may not be able to completely solve my problem, but there is some fraction of information I can send in. So what I'm trying to bring to your notice here is there is a lot that can be done with what we have. It's just that we have to do with what we have. And we have to map what we can do with what we have got. So if you look at, similarly, the platforms, landline phones, smartphones, and etc., you see the same kind of scenario there. Mobile phones, between text phones and smartphones, we can intersect about 20% of all healthcare transactions and about 70% of preventive care. And we all understand preventive care is very crucial to contain this growth of daily figures that we are talking about. So if we can focus on this mobile intersect and develop applications, there are applications and scenarios that have already been demonstrated across the country, which has also been published. But I would like to bring to your notice the usage scenario today, and the red sticks that you see there in all these care programs and activities are using satellite connections. You hardly see mobile connections being used completely. There have been cases where it's been demonstrated successfully, but on a majority scale across these projects, you see this is what is being used. So I would like to conclude this with these things that I would open up for discussion. So we can accelerate preventive care without waiting for latest technologies. We can prioritize investment on alternate technologies based on care scenarios. We can enhance utilization by launching graded e-services. The same information probably can be sent with a better accuracy on a video or on an image as compared to a text, but there is some basic information that if we could send by text with some services can be launched, we should launch them. We should just identify graded services based on this quality of service. Introduce transaction-based costing and billing. It's a very important thing to reduce the entry barrier and the capital expenditure. Since transactions have been identified, we can now figure out, we are moving actually onto the next project with World Bank on doing an activity-based costing on these transactions. So if one can estimate the cost of these transactions in terms of ICT, it will become much easier for somebody to bill based on transactions, then therefore pay-per-use models can evolve. So last point here is we see a lack of incentivized platform where people can share the BKMs that are coming in from several projects on an incentive basis. So if this was available, I'm sure across the already happening projects across the country, people would be volunteering to come and share those things and actually get a revenue out of it. There's no business model to share those best known methods. So this is the scenario right now. I would like to place it with you. Thank you.